Ethan Blackwell had always been a man of rules. In the heart of Manhattan, his towering office overlooked the city's glittering skyline, a testament to every goal he had ever achieved. Born into a family that valued discipline over indulgence, Ethan had risen to the top of Blackwell Enterprises not just through ambition, but through an unwavering code of conduct. To the world, he was the untouchable CEO, respected, feared, admired, but beneath the tailored suits and polished smile lay a man who had never allowed himself to falter, especially when it came to matters of the heart. Every morning, the city greeted him with its usual chaos, horns blaring, subways rattling, streets bustling, but Ethan moved with a calm precision, as if time itself bent around him. His apartment in the Upper East Side reflected his life, minimalistic, orderly, untouched by frivolity. The penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the Hudson River that reminded him of the clarity and control he prided himself on. Friends were few, trust even rarer, and romantic entanglements? Non-existent. Ethan had made a silent vow long ago: never let emotions compromise his world, never allow intimacy to cloud judgment. Yet, that very control, that fortress of self-restraint, was about to face a challenge he could never anticipate. It began on a crisp Friday evening when the city's elite gathered at the Ritz-Carlton for the annual Blackwell Gala. The chandeliers sparkled like constellations. Laughter mingled with the soft clinking of glasses, and the scent of expensive perfume filled the air. Ethan arrived in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his presence commanding attention, yet he barely spoke, observing with a practiced distance among the crowd. The world moved in a blur of celebration, but Ethan's focus remained unwavering. He was the untouchable CEO, the man who had never crossed a line, never faltered, never broken the rules he had set for himself. But tonight, amid the glitter and the whispered promises of indulgence, fate was quietly maneuvering to confront him with a reality he had never faced, a night that would shatter the boundaries he had so carefully built. The city glittered beneath him as he departed the gala, stepping into the sleek black limousine that awaited. He didn't know that in the same city, a woman was wandering the neon-lit streets, unaware that her life, and his, was about to collide in ways neither could have imagined. This was the story of Ethan Blackwell, a man of iron will, about to face a night that would test every principle he had lived by. One night, one unexpected encounter, and the untouchable would find that some rules were meant to be broken, not by choice, but by destiny itself. Madison Carter had always been the life of every party, her laughter echoing above the music, her confidence radiating in every room she entered. That Friday night, she had been invited to an exclusive Manhattan gala, one she never imagined would change her life forever. The glittering ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was alive with New York's elite, champagne flowing freely, and the soft hum of hushed conversations blending with classical jazz. Madison, dressed in a midnight blue gown that shimmered with every movement, was the picture of poise and charm. But as the night wore on, the crowd grew denser, the music louder, and Madison began to feel a sudden dizziness she couldn't shake. The room blurred, laughter became distant, and the world tilted beneath her. Someone had spiked her drink. Panic surged, but before she could react, her vision went dark, and the last thing she remembered was the cold marble floor rushing toward her. Ethan, exiting a quiet corner of the gala, noticed the commotion. A group of guests hovered around a fainting figure, their concerned whispers barely audible over the music. His instincts kicked in instantly, calm, precise, and unyielding. Pushing through the crowd, he saw Madison crumpled to the floor, vulnerable and fragile in a way that stirred something unrecognizable in him. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms, her weight light yet unsettling in its intimacy, and moved her out of the chaos of the ballroom. The drive to his penthouse was tense. Madison's consciousness flickered in and out, her breath shallow, murmurs incoherent. Ethan, who had never allowed himself a moment of weakness, found his thoughts entangled with concern and something deeper, a protective instinct that he had never experienced. He set her gently on the living room sofa, the city lights casting a soft glow across her face. For the first time in his meticulously controlled life, Ethan felt uncertainty. Madison awoke to a world she didn't recognize, the sleek, Minimalist lines of Ethan's Upper East Side penthouse, the distant hum of the city far below, and a man whose presence was at once intimidating and reassuring. Confusion clouded her mind. She tried to sit, to make sense of how she had ended up here, but Ethan's voice stopped her. "You're safe," he said, his tone firm yet oddly gentle. "You don't need to move." Her eyes widened, questions tumbling from her lips, but Ethan remained calm, guiding her with careful gestures, offering water, blankets, and words of comfort. The accidental overnight encounter, though unintended, was unfolding with a tension that neither of them could deny. In that penthouse, the unshakable CEO and the vulnerable party girl were thrust together by fate, each step of the night weaving a thread that would bind their lives in ways unimaginable. What began as an unfortunate accident had set the stage for a story of obsession, vulnerability, and the collision of two worlds that were never meant to meet. Until now. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan's penthouse, painting Madison's face in soft gold. She stirred, groaning softly, confusion clouding her gaze as she realized where she was. Panic flashed in her eyes, but Ethan was already there, seated across the room, his posture impeccable, his expression unreadable. I don't remember anything," Madison stammered, her voice trembling. How did I get here?" Ethan's jaw tightened, the familiar control he wielded over his life now warring with an unfamiliar tension that surged through him. "You fainted at the gala. Someone spiked your drink," he explained, his voice steady but carrying a rare edge of concern. "I brought you here to rest. That's all." Madison nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a stranger's apartment, yet something about Ethan's presence, his composed aura, his unwavering gaze, was oddly comforting. And for Ethan, every detail of that night haunted him. The way her hair fell across her face, the softness in her voice, the fragility he had instinctively protected. Days passed, and the incident became an unspoken thread weaving through their lives. Ethan found his thoughts repeatedly drifting to Madison, her laughter, her unguarded expressions, the vulnerability he could not forget. He had never allowed himself distraction, let alone obsession, but her image consumed him. He replayed the night endlessly in his mind, analyzing, rationalizing, yet failing to quell the emotions stirring within. Madison, too, was affected. Memories surfaced in fragments, shadowed laughter, the warmth of a protective hand, a stranger's concern that felt startlingly intimate. She wrestled with embarrassment, confusion, and an unexplainable pull toward Ethan. She wanted answers, yet feared the intensity she felt whenever she looked at him. The collision of their worlds became more pronounced as Ethan sought excuses to cross paths with her. Corporate events, charity galas, accidental encounters in Manhattan streets. Each moment heightened the tension, his controlled demeanor cracking under the weight of his obsession, her curiosity battling caution. Ethan's obsession, though silent to the world, was consuming him. He found himself analyzing every interaction, imagining scenarios that could never occur, feeling protective in ways that defied logic. The unshakable rules he had lived by, discipline, emotional distance, restraint, were crumbling under the force of a connection he had never anticipated. Madison noticed it too, the way his eyes lingered longer than necessary, the subtle gestures of concern that bordered on intimate. The tension between them simmered with unspoken questions, desire, fear, obsession, and morality intertwining. Each encounter was a test of control, a push and pull of emotions neither could fully manage, setting the stage for confrontations, revelations, and decisions that would challenge every boundary they had known. In this dance of obsession and restraint, the untouchable CEO and the vulnerable girl were being drawn together, their lives irrevocably intertwined. The question lingered, unspoken yet undeniable. How far would obsession push them, and what lines were they willing or unwilling to cross in the process? Years of solitude and control had shaped Ethan Blackwell into the man he was, but beneath the polished surface lay scars no one could see. As he walked through the familiar corridors of Blackwell Enterprises, memories flickered, childhood lessons in discipline, betrayals disguised as mentorship, and a vow he had made long ago never to let intimacy derail his ambitions. Each decision, each boundary, had been forged from experience and self-preservation. Yet Madison's presence was unraveling those carefully constructed walls, stirring emotions he had buried deeper than even he knew. Madison, too, carried her own hidden stories. Born and raised in Chicago, she had moved to Manhattan chasing dreams of independence and self-fulfillment. Life had taught her to be strong, charming, and resilient, but the city's glimmering surface often masked moments of vulnerability she rarely revealed. The Gala incident, the helplessness she had felt in Ethan's arms, had cracked open a part of her she had long shielded from the world. She now questioned trust, morality, and the strange pull she felt toward a man who, in another life, would have seemed untouchable and unapproachable. As days bled into nights, Ethan found himself recalling the night in fragments, the soft warmth of her hand against his, her shallow breathing as he carried her, the way her presence lingered in his apartment long after she had left. Flashbacks revealed moments he had overlooked at the gala, the brief exchange of a smile, the subtle laugh, the way she had glanced at him, unknowingly piercing the armor he had built around his heart. That Madison's memories were equally fragmented, yet vivid enough to haunt her. The vulnerability she had felt, the weight of being cared for by a man whose power and control contrasted sharply with her own fragile state. These recollections began to influence her decisions, making her cautious yet curious, fearful yet drawn to Ethan's world. Their interactions became a delicate balance of tension and revelation. Boardroom meetings, chance encounters, and charity events provided the backdrop for subtle exchanges, each layered with unspoken emotions. Ethan's obsession was tempered by respect, yet he could not deny the fascination that had taken root. Madison's curiosity clashed with self-preservation, creating a magnetic pull neither could resist. The city itself seemed to reflect their internal states. Manhattan's towering skyscrapers mirrored Ethan's ambition and discipline, while the bustling streets and hidden corners echoed Madison's vulnerability and courage. Together, their stories intertwined against the backdrop of a city that never slept, emphasizing both the contrast and the inevitability of their connection. In revealing their backstories, the foundation for their emotional entanglement was laid. It was no longer just an incident at a gala. It had become a collision of past wounds, desires, fears, and moral dilemmas. The untouchable CEO was confronting not only Madison but himself, and she was learning that vulnerability could be both dangerous and transformative. Every glance, every word, every moment carried the weight of their histories, pushing them closer to the turning point that would demand honesty, confrontation, and choices neither could ignore. The tension between Ethan and Madison had been simmering for weeks, each encounter charged with unspoken questions, stolen glances, and carefully measured words. It all came to a head one rainy evening in Manhattan, the city lights reflecting off wet streets as Madison arrived at Ethan's office for a scheduled meeting that suddenly felt like anything but business. "I need to understand." "Ethan," Madison said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the storm within. "Why did you bring me to your apartment that night? What were you thinking?" Ethan, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms crossed, let the rain-smeared skyline fill the silence before turning to face her. For the first time, his control wavered. "I didn't think," he admitted, voice low, a rare crack in his stoic facade. "I acted instinctively. You were vulnerable, and I couldn't leave you like that." Her gaze softened, yet sharpened with unasked questions. "But the way you've been, watching me, reaching out, interfering in my life, it's not normal." "I know," Ethan said, stepping closer, tension radiating from him in a way that was both commanding and vulnerable. "I can't explain it. I've never felt like this before. You're everywhere in my mind. I can't turn it off." Madison's breath hitched. Confusion, fear, and something deeper collided in her chest. "And you call this concern?" she whispered. "Or obsession?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Maybe both. Maybe it's not rational. But I need you to know, I will never harm you. I will protect you, even if that means confronting every rule I've lived by." They stood there, the rain drumming against the glass, the city oblivious to the storm between them. This confrontation stripped away pretenses. Neither could deny the intensity of the connection, nor the moral and emotional dilemmas it brought. Words had failed them in private exchanges, but now, laid bare, truth demanded acknowledgement. Madison realized that beneath the power, wealth, and control, Ethan's obsession was rooted in something more complex: care, guilt, and an emotional awakening he could not contain. And Ethan recognized that Madison's skepticism and strength were as irresistible as they were necessary to keep his own emotions tethered. It was a turning point that redefined boundaries. They could no longer pretend this was a fleeting incident. It had become a collision of desire, responsibility, and moral reckoning. Every choice from this moment forward would shape not just their relationship, but their lives in a city that demanded appearances yet rarely revealed its hidden truths. As the night deepened, both felt the weight of realization. Neither could escape the pull, and neither could deny the questions now haunting them. How far would trust go? Could obsession be tempered with respect? And would they allow the fragile thread between them to become something stronger, or let it unravel entirely? Asterisk. The following weeks tested both Ethan and Madison in ways they had never imagined. The city continued its relentless pace, yet within the walls of Ethan's world, time seemed to slow, every encounter charged with unspoken tension. Their connection, once accidental, had evolved into a force neither could ignore. It began with small gestures. Ethan leaving coffee at Madison's office, checking in after late-night work, subtle protection that spoke louder than words. Madison, initially resistant, began to see the layers beneath his intensity. The man shaped by discipline but capable of vulnerability. The CEO who carried both power and conscience. Slowly, the walls between them eroded. The turning point arrived during a gala hosted by Ethan's company, an event meant to showcase business triumphs, but now transformed into a crucible of emotions. Madison arrived, stunning in a silver gown, aware that every eye would fall on her, yet more focused on the man across the room. Ethan, seeing her from the other side, felt a surge of clarity. The obsession that had gnawed at him for weeks crystallized into purpose. He would not let fear, misunderstanding, or past rules dictate this moment. They found themselves alone on the rooftop terrace. The city lights sprawling below, a quiet space away from the crowd. Madison confronted him one last time. "Ethan, what happens now? Are we us?" He took her hands in his, voice steady yet charged with emotion. "I don't know what the future holds, Madison, but I do know this. I can't ignore you. I won't ignore you. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I'll face it with you. You've changed me in ways I never thought possible." Madison's eyes glistened, a mixture of relief, hope, and the undeniable spark of attraction. "Then let's be honest with ourselves," she whispered. "No pretenses, no walls. Just us." And in that moment, the untouchable CEO who had lived by rules, restraint, and discipline embraced a transformation he had never anticipated. Obsession had shifted into care, vulnerability into trust, and two lives, once parallel and isolated, now intertwined in a bond neither had expected, but both had longed for in secret. The city beneath them continued to bustle, indifferent to the private revolution above. Yet for Ethan and Madison, the night marked the beginning of a journey, a collision of fate, emotion, and choice that promised both challenges and profound connection. They had faced fear, temptation, and moral boundaries, emerging not unscathed, but awakened to the transformative power of trust, love, and destiny. As they stood together, hand in hand, the world felt simultaneously vast and intimate, a reminder that some encounters, no matter how accidental, were meant to change everything. And for Ethan Blackwell and Madison Carter, the night was no longer about chance. It was about choice, courage, and the undeniable pull of hearts finally willing to surrender to what they had long denied. Asterisk. If you've been captivated by Ethan and Madison's story, their collision of worlds, their struggle with obsession, trust, and the unexpected pull of destiny, don't let the journey end here. Hit the like button if you felt the tension, the longing, and the emotional stakes as vividly as they did. Share this story with someone who loves high-stakes romance, and let them experience the thrill of a connection that defies rules, power, and expectations. We want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Madison's shoes? Could you trust someone like Ethan after that night? Or do you think obsession can turn into something real? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and love seeing your reactions. And if you can't get enough of dramatic, heart-stopping stories that explore love, power, and the human heart in the most unexpected ways, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next story. It promises even more twists, emotions, and unforgettable moments. Your voice matters in this story. Comment, like, and share, and let's continue exploring the choices, the transformations, and the undeniable pull of connection that can change lives forever. Asterisk.